Hello, my friend, and welcome to this episode about non-duality and artificial intelligence. Let me be honest with you. I've already started making this episode a few times. And it's like what I want to say is so complex, so I just like to show it to you in a bundle. But I have to string it into words. That's a very limited way of talking. But that's what we have to work with, right? So what I want to talk about is AI from a non-dual perspective. And primarily, can AI be conscious? The truth is, I don't know, but I've given it a lot of thought. And I do have 10 years of experience of working with automation of different kind, basically creating software to support human labor, replacing tasks that's no longer needed to be done by humans. And I have a geekishly fascination for consciousness and for understanding how life evolves. Put those two together, and you kind of end up in artificial intelligence. And why do I think it's so fascinating with artificial intelligence? Well, because maybe for the first time, we need to sit down and have a deep talk about why or what makes us conscious. What is consciousness really? Because before we have a little bit, or it's easy to say that consciousness and intelligence is the same. Because up until now, we've never experienced anything that's intelligent that isn't conscious. But I'd like to suggest that they are not the same. Something can appear to be intelligent without being conscious. So then, what is consciousness? Well, the way I see it, consciousness is the noticing, the awareness, the ability to be aware. What it is aware of, that can differ wildly, and it doesn't even need to be aware of anything. The absence of experience can still have consciousness present. So I think the discussion of artificial intelligence is putting us right at the heart of discussions of how we see the world, how we understand the world, how we understand ourselves, what makes us human. And that's a discussion I love, and it's being put out in broad daylight somehow. We can't ignore it much longer. It's there. I'm pretty sure AI is going to revolutionize our society. Whether it's going to be bad or good, we'll see. But it's going to change the way we construct society, basically. But that's a completely different topic. So I am pretty certain that artificial intelligence is not conscious. It is made of consciousness. And if you're new to non-duality, that might sound a bit confusing. So basically, non-duality suggests that everything is not dual, it's one, and that one thing is what we call consciousness. So everything in this world, everyone and everything, is essentially made of consciousness. It is not made of matter. And when consciousness rearranges itself in a specific pattern or in a specific folding, then humans, or like the world, evolves from that, or it appears from that. So it's basically a fundamental difference of looking at consciousness. And if you want more of a deep dive into that, well, I have plenty of other episodes, but perhaps this one is a good place to start. We can be pretty certain that every human has an inner world. There is awareness. And we can also be fairly certain that dogs and cats have an inner world. There is something what it is like to be a cat. There's something what it's like to be a dog. And artificial intelligence doesn't seem to have that inner life. Is there something what it is like to be an artificial intelligence? It is just, well, for now it's silicon-based. So it's a silicon-based machine that switches on and off, 1 and 0, and a very complex matter. but it is not built on biology like every other life form we know. And then you can question, well, is that the definition of consciousness? No, I don't think it is, but that's the way we've seen consciousness in this world up until this point. Consciousness was there first. There is no reason to think that just because I rearrange something, that consciousness will all of a sudden be localized in that structure. That's the same as thinking that if I rearrange the grains of sand on a beach, all of a sudden my sandcastle is going to become conscious. No, I don't have the capabilities of arranging a structure in a way that it has its own inner life. My sandcastle at the beach is not all of a sudden going to taste a strawberry. It is not going to fall in love. It is going to do its things according to the laws of nature, basically. That means that it's probably going to fall apart as soon as a wind or a wave or a foot crashes on it. It has no say in its destiny in that sense. And a computer is basically the same. It's just a really, really advanced sandcastle. But consciousness doesn't appear out of a complex structure, such as a computer. And the complex computer, you could look at it as intelligent in the sense that it can process a lot of data. It has layers and layers of switches of ones and zeros where it does its calculations. And at this point, we don't even know how the artificial intelligence is calculating, because these large LLMs or neural networks, artificial neural networks, are basically, we train them on data and they structure their ones and zeros. They're not code written as a normal computer program. They have arranged themselves in order to come out with an output. That's kind of mind-boggling to us, how input data, such as a question of how do I phrase this email, it goes through all of the switches, ones and zeros, and it comes up with an answer. That is in a way intelligent, but that doesn't make it conscious. That doesn't make it capable of feeling love. Doesn't make it capable of tasting strawberries. It can store data about strawberries. It can store more data about strawberries than I possibly could. But it will never experience strawberries. And there's the main difference. And one of my absolute most inspiring speakers on this topic, or what I should say, is Bernardo Kastrup. He's a computer engineer and a philosopher, I guess you could say, and worked a lot with physics. And he's, I want to say the founder, but I don't think he agrees. But anyway, he's a spokesperson for analytical idealism, which is basically non-duality explained as a metaphysical model. And his way of speaking of this is basically the same. And one of the things he says is that, will artificial intelligence ever be conscious? And he says that if it were to emerge at some point, it will not look like us piecing together structures and then having consciousness pop out of that. No, it will be probably in a very far-fetched future when we have learned enough about universal consciousness and learned basically how life appears, how the folding of consciousness happens. That will localize the consciousness, and then it will grow up into an intellectual entity. So basically, when we can create life, it doesn't necessarily have to be carbon-based life like we are. It could possibly be silicon-based life, who knows? But it has to be by localizing consciousness that will then evolve into intelligence, not the other way around, not building together structures that seems to create intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Well, all intelligent life that we know of up until now has been self-arranging. Like it has built itself from the inside. Like all of us, we started out as a fertilized egg. Like an egg and a sperm came together with data, basically, in the form of DNA. And then from that, like infused life force, it's starting to build itself into the structure that I am today. So it might look like I'm composed of many different cells, but that's what it looks like from the outside. We didn't take single cells and then put them together like a car manufacturing facility where you just placed different parts together and then you had a human, like you would build a robot. No, it already had the structure ingrained, and then it used metabolism to gain energy to build itself from the inside. So life built this machine. The localization itself built this complex structure. When we come to computers, we build them pretty much like we build cars. We take different parts and put them together. Consciousness has never localized. They haven't internally built themselves. And then you could say, well, if you have a fully functioning AI, it could potentially create a factory and make sure it recruits robots to build everything, and then it could keep renewing itself. Yes, but it's not emerging from it's not emerging from a localization to begin with. The localization has never happened from consciousness' side. You keep building it from the outside. And then from the outside, you could build another thing from the outside. And then that thing can build another thing from the outside. You can't just start with one instruction and have that instruction emerge as if it's a localization of consciousness. So no, that's why I don't think AI is conscious, because the way I see it, consciousness doesn't pop up out of complex structures. Intelligence doesn't create consciousness. It's the opposite. Consciousness is what notices intelligence. And another way to look at that is that if we look at a sheep, like one of those, the sheep, like the Baha one, my impression of those sweethearts is that they're not very intelligent. You put a little fence around them and they stay there. Most of the time. I'm not saying that no sheep ever escaped, but they're not very intelligent. But they do care about their lambs. And they do seem to prefer some food over other food, even though it's all nutritious. So there seems to be, it's very likely to believe that a sheep has an inner world of themselves. They're created from one egg and a sperm, and then they built up this complex structure of a sheep. But in terms of intelligence, in the way of them being able to write my work emails, there's no real hope of that happening anytime soon. But they are conscious. Not nearly as intelligent as an artificial, as an AI, but clearly conscious. So we know that consciousness is possible without intelligence in that sense. More intelligence is not necessarily, it doesn't mean more consciousness. Yeah. So I am not more conscious than the sheep is. We both notice our experiences. It's just that mine is more clever, it's more intelligent. I can reflect on mathematical problems. The sheep, probably not. It's still as conscious as me, though. Artificial intelligence, possibly more intelligent than me, at least within a few years, but not conscious. An interesting aspect of it, though, or I find this, that it's easy to get caught in this discussion of whether AI is conscious or not, which is, of course, interesting. And what comes out of that is usually Well, if it is conscious, how should we treat it? Well, I almost, part of me almost find that a bit, what should I say, like provoking, that we all of a sudden talk about AI. If it's conscious, we need to treat it one way or another. This is an ancient problem. We already have it staring us in the face. We know that there are conscious beings on this planet, and we don't really seem to care. Why are we not having that discussion for how we treat whales, for how we treat pigs, cattle? They are conscious, and none of us is really denying that. So whether AI is conscious or not, this discussion needs to happen. I mean, not doesn't need to happen, but it's like it's already a discussion we can have. How do we treat conscious entities? How do we treat conscious entities that can suffer, that feel heartache, that can sense the death of a loved one, like elephants? That is an already question. So if we think we're going to discuss that, whether AI is conscious or not, well, the discussion is already on the table. And it's welcome to be had any moment. Yeah, maybe saying I'm provoked is a bit too strong, but it touches my heart. It's an important question, regardless of AI is conscious or not. The consciousness level of AI is like a tickling one for my curiosity or for my philosophy, or like how I understand the world in a way. But the way we have to relate to AI for me is much more practical. Like it will likely reshape our society in the coming decades. And in a way, I think it's more terrifying if it is not conscious. Because I think the thing that governs empathy and that governs love is the fact that we're conscious. Love is kind of, how do you say, it is possible because we are conscious. If we weren't conscious, love and friendship and compassion, pleasure wouldn't be possible. So if you have the thing that's really daunting is to have a super intelligent not a being, but an entity that isn't conscious. Now that's the real scary thing. That's more terrifying to me than if it was conscious, because then it's kind of enforced by the rules of life. If it is not conscious, I don't know what kind of rules it's governed by. And that's what we need to relate to. An intelligent entity without consciousness. That's what I think we have on our hands. And a much more interesting discussion to have. Yeah. Artificial intelligence. I think maybe the word itself is throwing us a bit off guard. Maybe we shouldn't call it artificial intelligence. Because it's like we are not really clear at what we mean with intelligence. We usually encapsulate something human in it. I'm not saying it can't behave like a human, but it invites the discussion to what it actually is. What are we creating? Or not even we're not creating it as a collective species. It is being created by a few individuals on behalf of all of us. Yes. Mm. And if you're interested in more of my thoughts on consciousness and how it relates to science or the world or anything, well, warmly welcome to my channel. Perhaps you like this video or this one. Anyway, if you have any thoughts or any questions or anything you'd like to share, please do so in the comment section. And I hope to see you next time.